So we're going to go on a bit about the problem of the onslaught of paperwork that's currently the HR documentation in most businesses, how we offer tools at Microkeeper to streamline this, and then how we also offer tools that will streamline your documentation storage. And then we'll leave some time at the very end to do some questions. And if there's room for some discussion, we'll do that too. So starting off, like I said, we're a people-centered platform, so we want to focus on people. And so I want to ask you guys a few questions. So the very first question that I have is about what a current HR documentation looks like. So at a guess, and if you want to pop your answer in the chat, that'd be great. How many managers in Australia do you think would have a percentage? How many would say that they've had someone leave during their probationary period due to having a negative onboarding experience? If you would have to put a percentage on that, if you would have a guess, how many would you guess that would have said, yeah, I've had people leave in the probationary period? So I've got 50%, I've got 30%. The actual percentage is almost 60% of managers have had during their 10%. Yeah, it's a lot higher than we think it is. So 60% of Australian managers say that they've had someone leave within their probationary period due to having a negative onboarding experience. So that's a quite high number. If you think of how many people, parts of employees, would rate their onboarding experience as great, if you would have to have a guesstimate of that, how many people do you think that actually from the employee side would have had a good experience? Can you have a guess of how many that is?
5%, 30, yeah.
30%, 40, yeah. The actual number is 12%. So it's a little bit better than the 5% that Renee opted for, but it's definitely not as high as the 40%. So only 12% of employees actually in Australia say that they have had a great onboarding experience. There's obviously still parts of people that say that they've had quite a decent one or a good one, but very few people actually tell that their onboarding experience has been great. And then the last one that I want to ask about is how many Australian employees do you think feel lonely at work? And that's according to a workplace loneliness study by Reventure. And it ties in a little bit with onboarding in the sense of the fact that it might or might not be very human-centered. How many would you guess of employees? And this was before COVID even. Since COVID, it might indeed have gone up a little bit. You don't come across as sad, Renee. That's a good thing. But about 40% indeed of people, of employees actually say that they're lonely at work. So when we speak about human-centered onboarding, it's important to see that those numbers kind of showcase that there's at the moment still a lot of room for Australian businesses to grow and to make that better. Now, the funny thing is, if the same Australian managers as the ones that indicated that 60% had someone leave during their probationary period were also asked, how do you rate your own onboarding experience currently? The tier of sufficient to excellent, how many people do you think, given those numbers, how many do you think would rate their own onboarding as sufficient to excellent at a guess? About 80%, 90%? Yeah, indeed. So we do indeed see that about 98% of managers actually, despite all these numbers, will say like, okay, I have a pretty good onboarding experience. So 1/3 actually say that their onboarding experience is excellent, which is like in stark comparison with only 12% of staff saying it is, and about 51% rather say that their onboarding process is good. So it goes to show that there's a clear disconnect in that experience. And the funny thing is, when we call this webinar People Not Paperwork, is because we feel that there is a little bit of a disconnect between how much time goes into paperwork and how much time goes into making time for people. So if you think of, and you can just think of this, you don't have to necessarily put it in the chat if you don't want to, but if you have an idea of how much time do you think at your work when you do onboarding or your clients' work, how much time do you devote to people paperwork? So how much of that time when you think of onboarding actually goes into processing paperwork? Just have a think of that. And also have a think of which part of the onboarding process actually gets most of your attention. Is that the compliance part where you basically just do everything that you need to do, where you do policy related stuff and rules and regulations, where you just do basically the paperwork and all the things that you need to do? Is there time to go into clarification where you ensure that an employee understands their job and all the expectations? And then taking it further, do you even have time to go into culture, like a bit of a sense of what the organization stands for, like on a formal and informal level? And lastly, do you have time for connection? Do you have time to connect people to interpersonal relationships and networks within your company? So that's, even just thinking about it might make you think, okay, time that we devote to people paperwork at work, just thinking of all the contracts, tax forms, superannuation forms, company policies, welcome information, licenses, working visas and stuff like that. If you think of all the paperwork that you do, you'll probably notice that most businesses sit mostly in the compliance and clarification part. So a lot of that work goes into that part of things. And that begs the question, is onboarding at your company or your client's company an active or a passive process? Is the employer involved? Is the employee involved? Or is it basically just ticking off some boxes where we basically see how quickly we can get someone on the job? Is there time for actually looking at the human? So that's a bit the problem of paperwork and getting a lot of this paperwork done manually, and where it kind of takes away time for actually focusing on the person behind the new hire. So what Microkeeper does is automate parts of this onboarding. And how does that help? Well, we think it gives people a consistent experience. So every new employee that comes through a client with Microkeeper that uses our onboarding part gets a consistent experience. They get one system which will be less overwhelmed for the staff member, so they won't have to go through like 6 or 7 different pieces of paperwork or different software parts. They can just do everything in the one system. So they'll be feeling a lot more at ease in a sense. Oh, I went too far there. There's improved accuracy. When I first joined Microkeeper, I once heard John in a meeting refer to someone like, when people do fill out like a tax file number or something like that, how many times do you think, is that an 8 or a 6 or a 2 or a B or something like that? And I know for a fact that when the businesses that I've worked in, a lot of times there's been issues with illegible handwriting. So so that's definitely a problem when you still rely on paperwork. You've got the cost savings. I did a little bit of research, and like the cost in printing alone of paperwork in Australia is crazy. There's about 50 or so pages on average that people that get onboarded need to wade through. So it's a lot of cost saving from just a printing perspective, but that's not even thinking of all the time and effort that it takes to process these things. The other thing is that employee onboarding automated onboarding rather empowers your staff, because they're involved in the process. They will actually have a hand in it, and they will be actively engaged in what they do. And then the most important thing, I think, is that using an automated process where you can automate as much as possible along the line will give you more time to focus on people. I think at the moment we're all very time poor. I mean, I'm in a few work groups with accountants, bookkeepers, and business people, and the one thing that I keep on hearing is, look, we're very time poor. We need to do so many things, and so that's kind of no wonder that there's little time left for people. And what we want to do is create that time using automation as a helping hand to create more time for people. So I'm going to hand over to John, and we're going to show how it actually works in Microkeeper, and we're going to be pretty hands-on in that regard. We're going to see how are we adding employees in Microkeeper, what employee onboarding looks like from the employee perspective, and how they can sign documents and files. So I'll hand over to you, John.
Thanks, Dane. So yeah, so as Dane mentioned, with Microkeeper, we can take away from the standard papered onboarding and go full paperless. One other thing that I've actually heard a number of times when talking to businesses is sometimes when an employee is actually handed the paperwork themselves, they feel almost pressured that, you know, I've got to get this done. I've got someone that's looking over my shoulder. Should I do it at work right now? What if I've forgotten something? Do I already look bad as a scenario? With the paperless onboarding, you know, and especially with our platform, you know, they've got that ability to do it at home. So they can go home, they can ask their spouse, they can maybe ask a bookkeeper / an accountant or whatever that might be, and an advisor in a safe space and not feel judged. Was definitely one thing that came through to me from a number of businesses that have taken on the paperless onboarding. So I'm just going to log into one of our demonstration accounts. The first page we actually get to is what we call the control panel. And I'll give you guys a quick overview of this, but we'll primarily concentrate on that onboarding, adding a staff member. So when you log in as an administrator of Microkeeper, you come to the control panel, and it's a 24-hour live snapshot of what we can see today and what we need to potentially make judgment on. So you've got the rostering over on the left, segregated by department or location or role. Activity feed, so that's your Unix timestamp of everything that's going on in the business, to obviously give you that audit trail, which you can fall back on if ever need be. And then finally, you've got your clock status on the far right, showing who's on, who's off, and it's also a tool for management to be able to clock people on and off, also do emergency evacuation procedures, and also find out details if you are at an emergency evacuation procedure. You need to find that person's details or next of kin details to contact them. And finally, we've got our leave request, which we'll leave for a later date and an upcoming webinar, and we'll discuss that. So adding a staff member into Microkeeper, very, very easy. And there are 3 core ways in which we can do it. So the first way in which we can do it is via, say, an Excel data dump. So most people use this this method when moving to a platform like Microkeeper and potentially moving from another system, or potentially if you use recruiting agents and your business might be seasonal, or you employ a lot of people when a new contract comes up. So the recruiting agent will recruit for you. They'll then provide you with this data dump of staff members, which we can then upload directly into the platform. The second way is via API. So again, there are a few methods of using the API. One is like shown on screen here, like a Xero connection. So if you are using Xero for accounting and potentially may have used it for payroll and you've outgrown it, we can definitely connect and pull the data across for the employees. And then again, connecting to external platforms. So we do have an open API for employee import. So again, usually seen that's utilized by those recruiting agents, that they can then push the appropriate information through an API versus an upload download scenario. And if you are constantly employing, it is a nice offering, because you don't have to sort of batch staff members. They just come across as they've been recruited. The final method is the manual add employee, and I'm going to go through that one with us today. So we're going to add a staff member here. We're going to add Angela, and all we need when we're adding Angela is a first name and a surname. The system will automatically generate a username just like this one. We're then going to add Angela's email address, or we can add a mobile phone number. Oops, spell Angela right. And then we can send out basically the user details. So if we need to add further information, we can obviously do that as an administrator. But what we'd like to concentrate on is Angela doing it herself. So once I've put all that detail in, I can then come down here and I can set that I want to send her user credentials, which is basically a welcome letter that goes out to the staff member and gives them their username, password, and an overview of what they're about to send out to that staff member, what they can see when they first log into the Microkeeper platform. What we'll then see is once we've done this, Angela now is in the platform here, and we can then log in with Angela's details and see what she'll see as a staff member. So I'm going to log in now as Angela, and we're going to see what she sees for the very first time when she comes into Microkeeper. So as we log in here, we do see our skills and files, which we'll dive into a little bit later. But what I'd like to concentrate on at the moment is the completing your profile. So simply all we do is click the Finish Profile button. Now, the first thing we can do is the online tax file declaration, which is going to go through with STP when we process that on a payroll cycle basis. We'll also get an email confirmation just so that we can reset a password if ever we need, mobile phone number, emergency contact details, address, banking details, superannuation. This one here is a great new functionality. What we can do, I need to add my mobile number. What we can do in the superannuation is we can do a one-click superannuation offering. So if I put in, for example, I've got, host or whatever it might be, I can put in host as my super fund, and I can put my membership number in. If I don't know, what my super fund is, or maybe I don't have one, I might be a new Australian or whatever that might be, I can use the Microkeeper platform. So once I do use the Microkeeper platform, we can simply complete the profile. We can simply select a default fund. So that might be something like we partner with Q Super at Microkeeper here, and you can one button click, join Q Super, and everything comes back across. So you're activated as a new member, your membership number comes back into Microkeeper fully automatically, and from a point of view of the business, they're ready to process superannuation. We spoke about bank details. One of those ones that Stain said, is that a 6, a funny shaped 8, or a 5? Staff members can enter their own. Another one is availability. So if you do have limitations around, school pickups, or, you might be a part-time staff member and only work a certain amount of time within that week, you can enter that detail, which will obviously flag through to our rostering and calendar system. So the other things that we'll see as a bit of an overview in the employee profile is your rostering detail. We also have timesheeting information, pay slips, leave requests, messaging portal, skills and files, personal details which staff members can change, and a messaging portal through the payroll department. So we'll go into all of that in a later webinar. But the next thing we'll go over, and I'll hand back to Stain, is we'll start to talk about our skills and files area and why that's also so important, that we actually can integrate that to the payroll and specifically time and attendance system.
Perfect. Thank you, John. I am just going to share my screen presentation again. Making sure I'm on the right one. And yeah, I saw that we had a little bit of a struggle with showing the super integration because we couldn't confirm the phone number. So what happens indeed is when we confirm the phone number, what Microkeeper does is it sends out a text message to confirm that actual phone number is correct, and then basically you put it in a little code to make sure that the phone number that the person that onboards is actually using the correct phone number. And then once that's done, we can actually start the employee enrolling with the super integration there. But that's maybe something, John, that you can show in a bit of a later webinar or in a one-on-one if anyone is interested in that integration. So yeah, so the next thing indeed is that obviously like onboarding is not just about this basic information about tax file numbers, bank account details, and the likes. There are also other documentations that as a business that you need to have, that you need to pass. So whether that's certain accreditations that your staff needs, whether that's the contract or anything like that, Microkeeper does help with that. It's not just your standard forms or your standard information that you can grab from that information when someone onboards. So the good thing about using Microkeeper centralized documentation storage is that there's a few benefits that we've kept in mind when designing that, and one of them being the fact that documentation is available when it's needed. I've done a little bit of research in the lead up and found out that about, I have to check my numbers to make sure I'm not telling any fibs, but that there's about 7.5% of documentation gets lost or shuffled during their lifetime if it's paperwork. So if you think of the long-term storage that you need to do for Fair Work Australia, things like, for instance, keeping track of your tax file declarations, your payroll, employment details, overtime hours, leave entitlements, superannuation contributions and stuff like that. If all of that's just still on paper, obviously the chances of that going walkabout are very big. So it made sense of us that if you're going to use that in a system like Microkeeper, where you obviously have that as a part of the payroll, that the other documents can live in Microkeeper as well. One of the first rules that I learned when I got married is that things don't just go anywhere in a cupboard. They kind of go at a place. They have a home, so to speak. So that was something that was a phrasing that I learned that I wasn't aware of. But things have a home, and it's good when that home is centralized, so that things don't go missing. And you know that when you need it, you can go to Microkeeper to find it. We have clients that actually when they get an inspection that they need, okay, we need all this paperwork. If they use Microkeeper, they can very easily find all this paperwork linked to the employee's account, and we'll see that come back. I see that Melinda also had a comment about that. No way to retrieve data. So yeah, it's sometimes when data goes missing, obviously that is dangerous, which is why we continuously do backups and keep all our data on Australian servers as well, so that's definitely guaranteed. A great benefit about storing documentation centralized, and when John goes into a minute, you'll see that you can go as paperless as you want with that. So you can keep everything into one place. And like I said, if you only just think of those 50 pages on average that are printed with a new employee coming on board, just times that by the amount of people starting a new job, and you'll think of the dent that you can make by going paperless in just your employee onboarding. If for the whole of Australia would do that, what a benefit that would be to the environment. Microkeeper has an upload and cite and sign possibility as well, and John will go into that a little bit deeper. But the good thing about having that online is that all the metadata around that gets stored as well. So as John showed earlier, there's a Unix timestamp on every action that gets taken in Microkeeper. So when someone cites and signs a document, they will actually get timestamped. So there is actually a record. I see that there's a question. Additional documents like police clearance, is there a field where you can put clearance number in that can be sorted on, so it's a separate field that we can report on or export? I'll let John take that question in a little bit. He will showcase how it actually works within Microkeeper, if you're all right with that, John. But that is a good question. And the last important step I think that we have in regard to centralized documentation, that there's a privacy of documentation. So like I said, some people use like overseas servers, whether it's online, they go and send their files to like American servers and stuff like that, or even people that host them on servers in other countries where maybe the privacy laws are not, or the data protection laws rather, are not as strict. So Australia is a good country to have your servers located, and we use everything gets hosted here in Australia, and we do backups. So there's a good place to have your data stored. So I'll give it to John to showcase how it actually works, what it can look like for the employee side of things. Maybe we'll start with that, John. I can show basically all the things that an employee can see, the documents that they can sign, how you can upload skills and licenses, manuals and policies that you can let your staff cite and sign, whether that's like on the go or whether that's just when they start at the business, the ways that you can set certain skills to be critical, and that kind of ties into our clocking. And then lastly, certain notes that you can keep on the employees. So I'll hand over to you, John, if you want to take over presentation.
Absolutely. Thanks, Dane. So again, when we're looking at what we call the employee console, which is what a staff member has the ability to access in the Microkeeper platform via either the online web browser or through our Microkeeper app, which is obviously iOS and Android friendly, they can come to what we call our skills and files section. And the way I like to really describe this to begin with is skills and files are, in essence, things that we can either give to the staff members who want to give you information, or we want to retrieve information off you, or we want you to validate that you've seen something. So those are the sort of main ways in which we see this used. Now, we've got a couple of examples up here that are commonly seen in businesses. So just going through like a COVID check, a drug and alcohol policy, a JobKeeper nomination, and then a working with children check. And we're just going to go through a few of these just to showcase exactly what that'll look like. So the first one we'll start with is, let's say, the COVID check. So this could be something that you may have on what we see with most business on a daily or even what we call a weekly expiry. So what we're basically asking the staff member is we're asking the staff member, you know, the standard questions around COVID. Have you been overseas? Do you feel unwell? Are you fit to work? Et cetera, et cetera. And they've obviously read that they agree that they've read all the instructions from their employer, and now they want to start the check. Now they can simply tick that they've agreed to all of the conditions, and then they can submit it online. We do have a number of other things that we can pop in. So we can pop in things like expiry dates. We can put in upload documentation. So if we are, as a business, saying, you know, we want to make sure that you've done, you know, certain other external learnings in regards with this, and we're asking them to upload and provide a document on that, we can also ask for that in Microkeeper and validate an expiry date as well. We'll now move to the second, so a drug and alcohol policy. Now, the COVID check was very much a graphical, so we saw, you know, a lot of graphic there, a lot of words, but just something that's quite clean for a staff member to review. The drug and alcohol policy here, we've done, it's a little bit more on probably the wordy side, but we've also added a video as well to this particular policy. So again, going through all of the, and again, we see things like this in the construction industry, manufacturing industry, where potentially they're using heavy equipment and equipment that you definitely don't want to have any sort of inabilities that could be brought in via alcohol or drugs. So we've got to have that almost legal reference point, and again, starting or resuming the skill. Now, as you can see, this particular one says resume. The previous one did say start. So it is something that a staff member does have the ability to come back to later if they haven't quite got all the information at their disposal right at the minute. But like this one here, they can agree that they've, again, read it all and so forth. Now, one of the questions we did have earlier was, could you add additional numbers like clearance numbers and other things like that? Absolutely. We can put things in the notes, and we can have other elements that you can add to this. So all of this area up the top here that you can see, these aren't templates, these are customized. So you can customize anything at all in the particular form itself. Just got a question there, might have answered question in depth, but do we regularly back up on a daily basis? Yes, really good question there. So we run what's called a data clustering. So we've got 3 servers, one in Melbourne, one up in New South Wales, and one in Brisbane, and they share the load of all the data, but they are in essence copying data across. So every time a store command is sent to Microkeeper, it goes through our handling tool, which then distributes that information to our 3 servers, and then obviously backs it up in real time. Now, outside of that, we definitely do daily backups that are offsite those server farms, weekly backups, monthly backups. So, if there was an issue potentially, that was something along the lines of, a server went down, you wouldn't have any issue with Microkeeper, being that there are 3. So you would have to have a situation where all of them are compromised. So if all of the servers were compromised, and let's just say, the doomsday event where asteroids started raining down on the Earth and they killed all the server farms, well, there are data backups external to that as well. So realistically, the worst you could probably do would be lose maybe a day's worth of clocking, but it's exceptionally unlikely, because obviously the 3 farms would have to be taken down at the exact same time. Otherwise, obviously the redundancy is there. So this is the same sort of redundancy protocols that you see used in banks and so forth. We'll go back. Got a couple of questions there in regards with.
Maybe John, what I'll do is I'll come back to the questions in a minute. These are good questions to come back to towards our question time. If you want to keep going, I will take note of the questions. They are very valuable, and I can go to some of these questions in a bit.
Perfect. That sounds good. We'll keep progressing on. JobKeeper nominations, another one that we've got here. This one's more has some external links in it. So, if people don't know information, we can embed links and so forth. Again, pull data. So if we need to pull like employee data so that they are, yes, this is me, this is my date of birth, this is what I need, and this is what we need as a business to be compliant, we can do that as well. The final one on the page there is the working with children check. So again, a way in which we might want someone to upload some documentation. So we can showcase to them, hey, this is what we need you to have. You need to read the documentation here, and we want you to upload it into the system. Now, being that I'm actually logged into the platform as an administrator, I'm also going to take you through what we call the configurer. The skills configurer, basically what I was talking about before, how we can bespoke create these skills. So if we go into, let's just say, the COVID check, which is the one that we just did before, we've got a number of options. So firstly, we've got where we can actually put information. So very, very similar to a Word document in that you can just type paste, do whatever you need in this area. And obviously, as you just keep entering, it goes, it makes the page longer and longer and longer. So there's no limitation on what you can put in here. You know, it's basically up to whatever's up to your imagination. So to start off with, we can title the skill or file. We then have the ability to add URLs. So again, like that video that we saw in one of the previous ones. Third option is, who are we going to distribute this information to? Are we going to distribute it to all of our staff? Is it a certain group of staff members that need to see this information? So who is it? The next point is severity. So this is one reason why it's great to have a platform that does all of this licensing and skill set configuration also embedded with our time and attendance. Because what we can do is we have those 4 levels of severity. And if we do have the skill set up as what we call a business critical skill, that would mean that if the skill has either expired or the staff member hasn't completed the skill, we won't actually let them be rostered, nor will we let them clock hours. So I'll show you that just a bit after we go through this. But in essence, if I was to log in to the Microkeeper platform and click the clock on button and I haven't completed a critical skill, it won't allow me to do so. So again, just having the business's sort of eyes open from a point of view of software, we can definitely help out with that. Another question is, do we need documents with this? So do we need a staff member to be able to attach something? So again, like that working with children checks scenario, is it something that we need to be able to allow the staff member to decline? So is it just a cite and sign? Yes, I've agreed, etc. Or is it yes, no question? So again, COVID check would be a scenario where yes, you would want it to be declinable because they've got to be able to say, yes, I'm sick. Auto approval. So again, do you need this to go to a manager and for a manager or a HR department to oversee it before it's taken as an approved skill, or does it need, or is it auto approved? So COVID check would be one that yes, we would tick on auto approve, because you know you don't need a manager to validate if someone says I'm fine or I'm sick, because you know they're not a doctor. Expiry date, do we need this to reoccur? And then we can talk about expiry limits and then when we want reminders to come. As we can see, this particular skill set is what we call an active skill, so it's actually being used at the moment, but we can have them as a draft. So if we're just working on something that we don't want to put out to the team, we can leave it in a draft state. Or obviously, if it then has you know, reached its end of life, the skill, we can archive it and keep it for a later date, or obviously for if we need record keeping that we have done it, it's in our business archive. Prior to me just handing back to Stain, I'm just going to quickly go over in that employee console. One of the other options in the console is the clocking. So if you do allow staff members to clock hours via a console, it might be IP restricted, GPS, or whatever that might be, I do have the ability to clock on here. Now, what you can see here is the following skill is required, the Fair Work Information Statement, and it is pending approval. So I have submitted it and I've said, yes, you know, I've read it, but this one does need to be approved by my manager. So we are stopping the staff member from continuing on in the business until that is obviously approved. And obviously the same scenario happens if they haven't done it at all, and it'll mention that to them. So that's sort of a brief overview of how the skill sets integrate through to the employee self-service, as well as to other time and attendance, which we can obviously go into in a later webinar. But I'll hand back across to Stain.
John, before I go into the questions and comments section, could you just show us, if you go to the employee overview in, I think it's settings, employees. Yep. If we say we want to go to say Michael Scott's, or maybe Angela, we just created her earlier. Yep. And we want to go into her profile Indeed as a manager. So that's something that we haven't touched on Indeed, the personal files there. If we want to add files there, say that Angela has done something at work that she needs to be reprimanded about, or if there's something that she needs to sign that we want to do on a personal level, yep, we can keep notes on there. We can also make sure that things there are side and signed by staff or hidden from staff. Like we can keep notes on on employees there? Is that something that you can quickly just, I know I want to be mindful of time, but just go into how the add file looks like there?
Definitely, definitely. So one key thing that I'm glad you brought up, Stain, that I forgot to mention. So skills and files, what we just saw before, is sort of more of a global. So this is something that multiple people will need. So it's not just the individual, it's a group within our business. So, you know, it's our admin team, it's our site one team, it's whatever. When it comes, as Stain mentioned, to the individual, we can do the same sorts of things in what we call the employee profile. So if we go to add, we can title whatever we're wanting to do. We also have a type. So if it's, you know, to do with the award, if it's certifications, disciplinary actions, you know, or etc., any of these options within the platform. We can also upload files. So, hey, this is your employment contract. We're going to upload it into the system, and someone's going to sign off on the employee. Is going to sign off on that. Or if it is a disciplinary action, and we've got notes from that we've spoken to that staff member, you know, and we're just showcasing that, hey, we've done this, and we need to sign that you've understood what we've said, and this is the remedy that we're going to put into the future. We do have the ability to do that. And obviously all of these are then stored in what we call the personal files of this particular staff member. Now, another thing that Stain did touch on, was the ability to, obviously, as a manager or administrator, to be able to add notes to an employee's profile, obviously, that is purely just for our eyes, so not something that the staff member is going to see. And the answer is yes, we can. So we can obviously we can change the titling if we need, but we can add in here whatever we may need for the particular staff member. Now, as you can see up there, it does auto save. So as soon as we've made reference to whatever we need and lock that away, it'll automatically save to that employee's profile, which we can always go back to at any point in time and review, see who made the note, and obviously what it was pertaining to. So hopefully that's answered your question there, Stain.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. Yeah, time for to go into questions and comments. I'll first go over the ones that have already been placed in the chat, which are great. And then I'll come back to, and then if you guys want to ask a question after that, feel free to unmute your mics. One of the things, John, and it might be good to keep your screen up, because it's a question from Bernadette earlier, where she asks, can we pull off metrics on which employees have completed courses? So say that someone does like upload, say, a file where they say, okay, so working with Children Check as an example, or an RSA, or say that they've done like a crane operating license or something like that, and you've already gone to the screen. Can you show us again where that screen is?
Yeah, so definitely. So this one's what we call the skills management area. Now, it can be conveniently found under the payroll tab and skills management. Now, Bernadette, relating to what you've just mentioned, what we straight away show you is what we call the status is pending approval. So these are things as a manager that I need to, or it might be a HR department that I need to deal with at the moment. So basically I can go in here and I can then go and obviously review whatever's been uploaded, review the policy, and then I've got the ability to accept or decline or do whatever I may need. I also do have the ability to see all. So I can see, you know, what else has happened, who's accepted it, you know, has there been documents uploaded? We can also search by individual staff member, by our locations. So if we've got specific location-based skill sets that you may need for a certain role, we can do that. So we can say, okay, hey, and funnily enough, an example of this is we do have construction companies that use the skills area for, let's say, you know, your white card, your induction card, things like that. And they may have, you know, like a WorkSafe officer come on site and say, we want to see, you know, everyone's construction induction card. So in that case, as a manager, I can come in and I can say, well, my site is, you know, Melbourne office. I want to see, all of the certain skill sets. So it might be construction induction card or drug and alcohol policy. I can choose that, and then I can search, and bang, instantly it will give me the information that I need, and then I can hand that information directly over to the appropriate person, and they can literally be on an iPad or a phone, and they can view it here, or actually we can also have a copy downloaded and sent if we need. So hopefully that one answers that question.
Yeah, that's good. So if you go to if you would, I mean, this is a demo account, so some of this data obviously isn't live, so it might not be completely right. But so if you do manage by skill, and you look at this, if you do, filter by skill, say for instance, someone has done that crane license, will you also see will you only see the ones that have the skill, or also the one that is pending, or the ones that haven't done it yet?
It depends. So depending on what you've got allocated to the status. So if you do have all, you will see who's accepted, who's declined, who's still pending. Or if you're specifically looking for something like, hey, I want to look at site A and I want to see anyone who hasn't yet submitted their crane license, we could look for skill missing. We can really filter out the information that we need to obviously facilitate what we're trying to do.
Great, awesome. That's good. I hope, Bernadette, that answered your question. Obviously, if there's any questions that you want to go dive deeper in, guys, feel free to contact us outside of this meeting as well. We can always set up a one-on-one as well, or we can connect you with some of the staff in our support team too that will be able to show you exactly if you're a current Microkeeper user. So Rob asked, where do you go to create these and upload these documents, say the skills and files? So at the moment, I believe, if I'm correct, off the top of my head, you go to settings and then you go to skill config, where you can configure those skills and add new skill, and then basically build that from there. We've got a few templates there that you can use. So for instance, the COVID, I think, is one that we at the moment have templated. The JobKeeper employee nomination notice, which grabs also information from the staff members. So some of these are templated, and we can work on that with you as well. If there are certain ones that you need some assistance with, our team can help there. The video embedding question that I have from Frank and Lisa, yeah, we do not host the videos in Microkeeper itself. The videos are hosted on YouTube, Vimeo, and what you need to do is grab a embed link there, and then you can paste that into the actual skill or into the documentation that you are creating there. So the one that John showed rather had indeed that, which was a drug and alcohol policy. So you have a video there and it has a lot of text, but you can also just go videos and just show the video and say, hey, you have to watch this video, and let the person go, yep, I've approved this, I have watched this. So if you have like a training session or something like that, you can use this configuration for that as well.
Yeah, and just adding to that as well, usually we see sometimes inductions as well. So some people sort of do one of the questions that we've had in the past, because you don't have to have it specifically like it's written up here. You can actually attach a document. So you might say, drug and alcohol policy is the only thing that's written here to tell people what it is, and then you may attach a document. Now, why would you do that? Well, some of our users have their demographic of staff members, English may not be their first language, and they may have specific specific employees from certain backgrounds. So it might be a Filipino or whatever, and you might have many of those people that work for you in your sector. So we do see this in commercial services, and we do see this in agriculture. So what they'll sometimes do is they'll actually have, let's say, a policy written up in, let's say, Mandarin, and they'll attach it as a document. So it's in the person's native language. So we're trying to obviously break down those barriers of, you know, if we can facilitate and give it to them in the most appropriate form for them to understand. Because if it's specific around safety, you know, we don't want it to just be, yep, tick, agree, I never looked at it. We want to make it as easy for that person. So, you know, videos are fantastic, but if we can also do it in their native language, you know, you've got that ability to do so via the upload.
Awesome, that's great. I've got a question from Kylie, who's in the process of setting up Microkeeper up. Maybe that's a good one to come into on a personal level, working in aged care. We do also have some API integrations with some aged care providers, software providers as well. So we might be able to give you a solution there. Or we can work with you directly as well, if there's something that we can set up on the back end. Melinda has a question, John, that I will ask of you. Given that you have these skill tests, can Microkeepers be sent to the subcontractors as well for them to complete, or do they just have to be employees?
No, yeah, great question, Melinda. So in Microkeeper, when we do set up what we'd call in essence a user, which is, it is in the employee page, but it's what we'd refer to as a user. We do have the option here of setting their category. So as I scroll down, we've got the status. So we can absolutely put someone in as a subcontractor. They can take advantage of still the rostering, obviously the paperless onboarding if required for all of the skill sets, as well as the time and attendance. So yeah, definitely they can go into the platform as, call it a user, and be set as subcontractor.
Awesome. And then the admin at AGRI asked, those notes that you showed earlier, John, on the employee, while you're in that field anyway, at the very top, I think, will those be shown for, will the employee actually see those? So they will be just before the admin, is that correct? Am I correct? Yeah,
correct. So this note area here in the employee profile is purely just for administrators. Anything that's written into this area in the profile is specifically only seen by the admin team. The employee does not have access to this area.
Yeah, awesome. And I also think I saw, because I mean, I'm still learning Microkeeper as I go as well, because there's so much to it. That just is like things that I learn as I go. You can also upload personal files that you can then hide from the employee as well. I think that you can, like if you say you want to keep a note on or not a note, but if you want to keep a file or documentation that they don't necessarily have to see, hiding is maybe a bad term, but you can also set it so that it is kept on their documentation, but without them necessarily having to agree or tick it off as well.
Correct. So, yeah, you can. So where we do see things like that is it may be, for example, like a disciplinary action where you've submitted to them an overview of what's happened. So, you know, we identified the problem, we had a meeting about it, this is what we discussed, these were the outcomes of the meeting, and this is what we're going to do into the future to remedy the problem. So that would be maybe what you'd convey to the staff member, but then as a HR person, you may have taken notes in the meeting, like as in exactly what was said by whom, and we want to store that as well. So yes, we can definitely do that. We can obviously grab those files, upload them into the system, attach them to a staff member, and obviously just keep that as a private sort of storage of data against potentially, an instance or something that's occurred.
Awesome. That's great. I'm wanting to obviously be mindful of people's time. Like we've come to the end of the time slot, but we do have a little bit of time extra. So if you do want to hang around, feel free to continue to hang around. If there are any more questions, feel free to take your mic off mute if you want to and just throw a question at us, or pop them in the chat if you feel a little bit less likely like you want to talk. That's absolutely fine as well. So I'll give you guys a bit of time. In the meantime, if you do, well, thank you as well for joining us today. I really like seeing the response from the community, and it's great. And these kind of webinars are something that we've, since last month, started to do on a monthly basis. And we want to continue doing that, and we want to continue interacting with you guys, and also learn from these questions that you throw at us, because we are always open to creating developments and getting things developed that are actually needed in the actual field out there. I've got another question, John, from BNR Poultry. Paula how does an employer add default super? Is that something that you maybe want to take offline with them, or do you want to showcase that to everyone?
No, we can have a chat about it. At the moment, with regards to employer default, Paula, there's a couple of things that are sticking points, and basically what it is the super fund themselves has to have a live real-time API. Now, if we don't have a live real-time API, we can't automate the process like we do. There's no way of doing it, because there's no way of Microkeeper saying to the fund, hey, here is a new member that we've got. We want to grab a member number and allocate them to our default super. So in that respect, you would have to continue to do the same way. Now, there are 3 currently. Q Super is one of the largest. We are slowly working through. So Q Super was the first partner that we've brought on board, because they are one of the biggest in the next government fund. So we've brought them on first. Slowly there will be the remaining 2 available on the platform. So unless they are one of those, the full seamless integration where we can, in essence, push the data and in real time we receive the member number and you can process it literally within 2 clicks, really does sort of teeter-tot on the on the privy that one of those funds actually is available and has the API. So currently it's available with Q Super, soon to be another 2 in development at the moment. But yeah, in essence, the real-time allocation has to come from a fund that actually has the ability to do it.
Maybe is that a good thing? I don't know, Joe. Maybe I'm speaking out of out of term here, but can people just go to their default super and ask them to contact Microkeeper if they want to set it up, so that the super funds know that there's a request there from
absolutely
their clients?
They definitely can. So you can definitely have a chat to the super fund that you're with, your default fund, and ask if if they do have the API ability. If it's not potentially one of 3 that only, like, there is only 3 that do have this. So it's something that has to be approved by what's called APRA, which is the super governing body. So and it is quite difficult. They do have to make sure that sort of they are ticking all the boxes, everything's secure, they comply with the ISO standard, all of that sort of thing. So super funds are generically a slow-moving beast. They will all get there. Don't get me wrong, they will all get there. It's just whether they are at the moment. So yeah, definitely, as Stain said, you're more than welcome to chat to your fund and just say, do you have that ability, a real-time API, and see what they say. And if so, they can then contact Microkeeper to be added to the super default area, because it is something that they have to, we have to approve, and they have to approve as well.
Obviously, it's all about safety as well, indeed. So
security,
that's great. Yeah, security. Yeah, sorry. That's cool. Well, yeah, that's basically it. We will indeed provide notes from the session. We will also send you guys a video. Also, the people that weren't able to make it, we'll send this video. We also have a checklist for onboarding as well, where you have like a little bit of an overview of how you can do people-centered onboarding, and have a little bit of a logo where you can see, okay, these are the steps that Microkeeper actually can help us with automate. So yeah, that we'll definitely send that out hopefully this afternoon, and if not, that will be in your inboxes tomorrow morning. So yeah, thank you so much for being here. Next webinar that we'll do, it will be at the beginning of November, and that one will be about payroll compliance, which we've noticed that there's a lot of questions about lately. We're getting a lot of questions about making sure that the payroll is compliant, that the awards are interpreted correctly, that there's no underpayment or overpayment, and so we'll get a few guest speakers on board for that one as well, and people that can help you. So if you want to reach out to us, feel free to find us on the socials. We're on LinkedIn, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, and then you can always get in touch with us there, and I can set up meetings with people. So we've had a few people today that might need a little bit of help or want to get started with Microkeeper. So feel free to contact us, and we can show you the full brunt of what we do. So thank you so much, and we'll see you around next time.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you being here today.
Cheers.